Hello, all you naked, lovely mole rats. As always, I am Cosmic, and today I'm going to pose you a question. When does a promise become a lie? No Man's Sky recently released, and to my great dismay, it was a travesty. There was such a lack of content, a lack of depth in the overall thing, and of course, the biggest problem was that all of the features and content they said was going to be in it weren't. And that is a bit of a problem. But this is a problem that is synonymous with the video games industry at large. For years and years now, we as consumers have been lied to and misled on a wide range of products, from video games to DLC to even hardware such as the PlayStation 3. And you know what? I've had enough. And you know why I've had enough is because I've noticed, and I am guilty of this as much as any other video game critic, as any other reviewer is, where I've came out and said, that there's a feature not in the final product or something changed, and I've kind of let the developers get away with it. I've, many video game developers, many video game critics, including myself, have said, it wasn't their intention to lie, or maybe they didn't mean to, or something changed. And no doubt, video game development is somewhat of a fluid process. Things change from the original concept. However, it doesn't excuse lies. And frankly, I'm done trying to coddle these developers. I'm done trying to let them, get off with it, trying to think that they had best intentions in mind or that they're good people. Do you know what? I don't care at this point. At this point, I am so sick of lies and deceit that I don't care if you're the nicest person in the world. If you lied about your video game, then frankly, it doesn't matter if you are a nice person day to day or not. The fact is, you lied to consumers so that they would buy your product, and what they got was not what you promised. And that is just a bold-faced lie. I'm not going to stand there and blow smoke up your ass to say, he had the best of good intentions, or the development team are really nice and they didn't really mean for it to come across that way, or they were misinterpreted. All that bullshit. It's all exactly that. It's BS, and that is all it is. A lie is a lie, and it's time that we as consumers and we as an industry on both sides, both consumers and media, we start calling it for what it is. They're lying to us. Let's start calling it what it is. It's a lie, for God's sake. If any other person did this on this scale and this frequent in an industry, the industry would be torn apart legally. If I did this in my day job, if I went in and started lying to customers frequently about all sorts of things, promising them things that they were never going to get and that I knew they were never going to get, not only would I get fired, I would possibly face legal repercussions for that. And yet, the video game industry is one of the only industries where people can just tell you bold-faced lies and have absolutely little to no consequence whatsoever. And you may say, well, yeah, the reputation gets destroyed. Well, that's true. The reputation does get destroyed. But take an example of No Man's Sky. They're still making huge amounts of bank. Whether their reputation gets destroyed or not. Sony and Hello Games they're laughing all the way to the bank. Fact. And that's the end of it. And even if it does destroy their reputation, it still does not stop another developer in another 4 years promising the same things and delivering fuck all. Just take a moment to think about how many times you as a consumer have been lied to over various products. I mean, off the top of my head, there's No Man's Sky, there's Eternal Crusade that were promised to be a Warhammer 40k MMO, and it's basically little better than a lobby shooter currently. We've got Assassin's Creed Unity, where Ubisoft promised that if the game wasn't in a good state, they wouldn't release it and they would delay, which they didn't. They brought it out and it was an absolute mess. There's so many graphical lies. Look at, Watch Dogs. That was a complete downscale. Look at Aliens Colonial Marines. That game was a travesty. I remember when Sony lied about having the PS3 being able to run games at 120 frames per second. I remember when Microsoft and Major Nelson lied, saying that they couldn't switch off the Xbox One's DRM, and they bloody well did, and it just took the flip of a switch. Like they said, it could not be done, and they did it, and they just bold-faced lies. Why do they treat us like we're stupid when we're not? Consumers are not stupid, and it annoys me to the point where They possibly think that they have to lie to get people interested in their product. And that is just not the case, and it has never been the case. It's a tried and tested business principle that if you treat your customers with loyalty and respect, they will in turn treat you with loyalty and respect. Look at CD Projekt Red. Now, they release proper paid DLC as well as free small DLC to their fan base, to their players, for their loyalty and for their support. And that is just proof in the pudding, so to speak, of how well you can have a relationship between developer and consumer. And there's going to be people who say, oh, well, it's not all the developer's fault, people hype up games too much. And that is true. But the problem is that these developers and publishers consistently feed into these hype trains to make them more sales. It's a fact. It's not like there's a group of players who go, oh, we're really excited about this game, and then the developers go, oh, well, that's great, thanks for that. No, what happens is people get really excited about the game, and then the developers go, and we're doing this, and we're doing this, and we're doing this, bollocks, false promises, load of bullshit, and then it goes out of control. And the fact, at the end of the day, if developers and publishers didn't feed into these hype trains, and because they do, and they use them to their own financial gain, it is not for the gain of the consumer, it is for their own financial gain. If they didn't do that, then it wouldn't be as big of a deal as it currently is. People should be allowed to get excited over a product that they think they're going to like, or be, really loyal to a product that they really love. That should be okay. What shouldn't be okay is the developers and publishers using that particular fan base of a product to then stem more people and drive the hype even further. There's a clear difference between lying and marketing. You can market honestly. You can market your game or your product honestly without having to tell consumers bald-faced lies. And frankly, that is all that they are. Because at this point in the video game industry, there is no way, especially from seasoned developers, i.e. people like Peter Molyneux, people like Tim Schafer, there is no way that they do not know what is entailed with building a video game. So when they're making these huge promises and telling people loads of bullshit, there's no way they don't know in the front and back and all of their mind that they're telling lies. There's no way. And at the end of the day, it's really simple. If you want to treat your customers honestly and fairly, then instead of making a load of bullshit promises and trying to hype up your game to the point of ridiculous, why don't you just tell the truth? Why don't, year one, you go into E3, you show a not pre-rendered gameplay footage. Instead, just show what's actually in the game so far. Just show the truth, and then say, this is what we've got in. So, for example, No Man's Sky. How should you promote No Man's Sky? Okay, year one E3. Go into E3 and say, we are creating a procedurally generated open world exploration game. Done. That's all you need to say. Show a little bit of gameplay footage that isn't bullshit. That's your year one. The people will be interested in that because they like procedurally generated open world games. Year two, you've had a year of development, you've added in some new features like mining and shipbuilding. Then at E3, year two, you talk about mining and shipbuilding. Year three, after another year of development, you've added in a couple of more features. Talk about those features. Year four, final features. Talk about the final features. And then you have release. And then you have not lied a single time, because what you talked about every year is what you've already done, what's already in the game, what's tried and tested, instead of making lies that we may put this in, or we may put this in, or you could do that. Instead, just tell the truth. It's not that bloody difficult. For me personally, I would really like to see legal repercussions start to happen for publishers and developers who lie about their products. And I'm not just talking about a small class action lawsuit where players get $20 each. I'm talking about severe repercussions that hamper them in the future and ultimately deter others from doing the same. For me personally, on this channel specifically, I am no longer going to stand there and, think that the developers have had the good intentions in mind, or that the publishers are trying, it was just something that they tried to do but didn't succeed to do. And at the end of the day, because if you try and promise a feature and then it doesn't work out, why don't you just come out and say it? Instead of not saying anything, why don't you just say, well, we wanted this in the game, but it wasn't technically possible with the timescale and the money that we had, so we're sorry about that. You know, come out and say it before release. Come out and say that before release. So on this channel, people are just going to start getting called out. If you lie about your video game and you don't say anything about that feature that you lied about before release, and the game releases and it isn't in there, and you know, people bought that on that promise, then you're going to get called out. I'm no longer going to stand there and sit there and say, well, you know, they're good people. No, you lied about it. You're a liar. That's a fact. In any other industry, anywhere in the world, you would get punished for that. And frankly, I'm not having it on this channel anymore. If you lie about your video game, you're done. That's it, done. I'm certainly glad that Steam has their refund policy in place now, and I think that has gone a long way to, you know, really changing the minds of certain developers and certain publishers. I mean, I love the fact that there were so many refunds for No Man's Sky. I think that's a great thing. I especially thought it was a great thing for when Batman Arkham City released on PC, and it was an absolute just tragic. It was just tragic, and people just refunded it straight away, and to the point where Warner Brothers took it off Steam until it was in a better state. And I think that has put a lot of power back into consumers' hands. But I think we need to go even further than that. I think that ultimately the industry as a whole, we need an investigations body. I think we need a, you know, very similar to the FCC in some respects, but we need someone that consumers can report to, and ultimately they can investigate. And if it's found to be ultimately fraudulent, because that's what it is, you are selling something that you're lying about to get money, so it's fraud, they need to be investigated, and then they need to have repercussions for that. But until that day, on this channel right here, I am no longer going to coddle developers and blow smoke up their ass. Instead, if you lie about your game, you're going to get called out on it, just straight up. And that's the end of that. So thank you so much for watching and listening to my rant. As always, do like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. And as always, I will see you next time.